Okay.
So you ready? Okay. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the legislature, and from what I can tell, none of it's really good. Probably the most dramatic thing is this preemption bill that's getting a lot of traction. It's a House Bill 2127, in the Senate it's 814, but it seems like the House is where the action is happening. And basically what it does, it says for 9 very broad statutory codes in Texas, and if you want, I can list them out, but they're cover a wide range of stuff. Basically, it says we're going to preempt the field so that you cities and you counties, you cannot pass any ordinances or take any action that would conflict with any of these, hundreds, maybe thousands of laws in these 9 statutory codes. And basically what they're trying to do is prevent local cities and municipalities. It doesn't apply to ISDs, Alice. So that's good, but that's a few good things about it. And the bill has actually gotten worse. I went to the city council on Tuesday and the county commissioners on Wednesday. And at that time it was 6 statutory codes. Now it's 9. And it is now over to the calendars committee. And basically the kind of easy way to think of it is, under existing law, if a city or a county wants to do something, they can say, oh, you step in here and correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, since she used to be a city lawyer. But basically, you can do anything you want as long as it doesn't conflict with the statutory code or the Constitution. Doesn't come out very often. But it basically gives cities and counties a lot of leeway to act. So if this legislation is passed, it would basically say you can't act on any of this stuff unless we expressly tell you you can. So it totally flips the script on it. And it's not toothless. The other day, until they had this amendment that dropped, I think, on Thursday, say if City of Corpus Christi passed some ordinance that somebody thought was a violation of the Natural Resources Code or the Local Government Code, they could sue in any of 254 counties. They've changed that. So it's now any adjoining county. So that would be San Patricio, Clayburgh, Jim Wells. I can't remember if we've got another one touched in Nueces County, but those would be the parties that could sue, where we could sue.
Wow.
And it exposes the local officials actually to personal liability, because it expressly says you have no official immunity in your capacity as a city council member, county commissioner. So if you vote for this ordinance that I think violates the labor code or whatever code you pick, and I win, then I am entitled. It's not discretionary with the court. I'm entitled to recover my attorney's fees, and I could recover them from the city or from the individual. So it's basically designed to intimidate local officials from acting, and it's the most dramatically bad of the bills. There are a couple others that are pretty bad too. Senate Bill 1993 will apply to Harris County, and it's kind of derived out of a problem they had there apparently in the 2022 election, where they ran out of some paper ballots in some locations. And so it says that if there's, I think it's 2% of the polling places in the county run out of paper ballots for more than an hour, the Secretary of State may require that there be a totally new election. And there's no logical threshold for this. So like, okay, because of this problem that occurred in this many locations, 1,000 people were prevented from voting. Okay, so there's your 1,000 people problem. Bad, it's not good, not what you want. However, if you look at the results of Harris County elections, the closest election was 5,000. So it wouldn't have mattered. Even if those 1,000 people all voted for the same candidate, then nothing would change. But it actually just says we can throw out the whole election. So I don't know if that means, when you go vote and you've got, 20 candidates to vote for, the way it seems to read is you could say, okay, we're going to throw out all 20 of those elections from presidential down to county commissioner. It doesn't say something like I kind of just hinted at a minute ago. It doesn't say, okay, we had 1,000 people who didn't get their paper ballot who wanted one, And we had one race where it was decided by 800 people. We're going to rerun that one race, but we're going to, let all the rest of it go through. So it's really a pretty crazy bill. And that's like, I guess, my second scariest story. And back on the preemption bill for a minute, I forgot to mention one other important thing. There's no statute of limitations on this thing. So if somebody in 2025 decides that an ordinance passed by the city of Corpus Christi in 2023 was bad, or say it was 2029, somebody decides it's bad and conflicts with some part of the Natural Resources Code, apparently you can come along and say, hey, I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to sue these city council members, some of whom probably aren't on the council anymore. I'm going to sue them and try to recover my attorney's fees. And it's just totally crazy bill. There's some other ones that aren't quite as crazy, but they're still pretty bad. Countywide voting would be banned in the 90 counties that use it, including our county. I did talk to Kara Sands the other day to see if she had this on her radar. Unfortunately, she was very, very aware of it. And she said, we very much love countywide voting here in Oasis County. And she's, according to her, the County Clerks Association that she's a member of, she doesn't think it's getting any traction. I hope she's right, but you never know. You never know. Let's see. There's also a bill that is designed to intimidate local DAs by saying that any neighboring DA. Yeah. Let's go ahead. Were you putting your hand up? Okay, all right. No, okay, I see you.
No, I was just reacting to what happened Wednesday in Commissioner's Court.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
So anyway, this basically says, like, if somebody thinks the Oasis County DA is not prosecuting election crimes, and that person who thinks he's not doing his job is the DA in Clayburgh County, he can bring a criminal case in Clayburgh County for action that occurred in Oasis County, which is, Sally, you may know some more than I do, but I can't recall a criminal event that occurs in one county being prosecuted in another county, except in unusual situations like there's too much pretrial publicity, the defendant can't get a fair trial, then we'll move it to another county. But anyway, that's still pending out there as well. And this next bill is a pretty good example of the legislature just really wanting to, like the first one I mentioned, the preemption bill, just not trusting local governments. There's a bill, it's HB 3611, that says that you can't have ranked choice voting. So you can't even have it for, your city council, your county commissioners, even if you want it. And ranked choice voting is, highly debatable. It's pretty interesting. The day I was down in the legislature was March the 30th. And this bill was sponsored by Briscoe Cain. I forget where he's from, but he was a guy who went, I think, to Pennsylvania as a lawyer and was helping the Trump guys up in Pennsylvania trying to overturn the election up there. So kind of an out there guy. But there was another gentleman. He was a former GOP representative from Virginia, and he came all the way from Virginia to testify against this bill. So you had two Republican guys up there, one saying it's terrible, and Briscoe Cain's made it, because as you probably know, when the bill comes up before the committee, they have the author of the bill go up to the committee and they do what's called a layout of the bill. So the representative says, here's my bill, here's what it's about, here's why we need it. You guys have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Then they have the public comment. And at the end of the public comment, the representative comes back and he's invited to close, kind of like a closing argument for why you ought to pass this bill through the committee. But the GOP guy got up there and he said, here are reasons why you should do it. And if any of you folks here went to the, I know some of you I know on this call did, to the state convention last year, there was a lady, I think her name is Joanne Richards, I think, got up and she's very passionate about ranked choice voting and why it's the way to go. And she was there speaking about it. And so basically they would just say, you can't do it no matter you want it. We're just going to tell you you can't. And Mr. Kane's basic arguments were, we found that it can lead to results that Republicans don't like. And if one of his examples was Sarah Palin did not get elected in Alaska when she ran for Congress. Those are kind of the main ones. When we keep chatting here, and there was a list of bills on a bunch of different topics that it's probably about a page long. And I'll try to drop it in the chat, and there may be something there that is more interest to you than some of the other stuff. Yeah, go ahead, Sally.
Tim, if you don't, do you have any other bills to comment on?
Let me look here.
Well, I have a question about 2127, and
Sure.
I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought if you had more to cover.
I think I hit it, Sally, but let me just make sure. Oh, I'm sorry, I did forget one. It's one I actually testified on. It was HB 2020. And that one basically says that if I, as the Secretary of State who's appointed by the governor, not elected, if I decide there are recurring problems with election administration in a particular county, and if that county has an elections administrator, which we do not hear, but 134 counties in Texas do, I can say that election administrator is doing a bad job. I am removing that person and I am putting in my person, and that person will stay there as long as I believe there continue to be recurring problems. So obviously that presents a lot of potential for partisan shenanigans, because and it's mainly directed once again in Harris County. And basically that county, which I was surprised to learn, maybe I shouldn't have been, has 20% of the total number of voters in Texas. They could have their chosen elections administrator tossed out. And the way the election administrators are chosen now, it's by, I'm not going to remember who these 5 people are exactly, but I believe it's the county judge. And I think, I can't remember, but it's 5 elected people. So one thing you could say, okay, well, the secretary can, remove somebody, but the 5 people who were elected to office in that county, they will determine who the new elections administrator will be, instead of, the Secretary of State's chosen person. And they could have said, this will last for 1 election cycle or 2 election cycles, but it actually could really go on indefinitely as long as the secretary says, I think there are some problems with it. So what I did is I sent off a pretty long email to all the members of that committee, the House Elections Committee, and their chiefs of staff and legislative directors, to the extent we could identify those people, and basically said, if you're going to pass this bad idea, here are some procedures you need to have in place for, what is the tripwire, how long is it going to be in effect? Does this, elections administrator, does that person get to say, wait a minute, before you decide, let's have a hearing about this and let me tell you why I'm doing a good job. It was because the software vendor made a mistake and you can't hold me attributable to that, or whatever it may be. And what's the source of information? Do you have to comply with the text rules of evidence, which are, no hearsay, it's got to be relevant? Or can the secretary just say, well, many people are telling me that, there's a problem in Harris County, believe me. So that's also a pretty bad one, because that could obviously swing elections. And all these seem to be targeted at major cities, which of course where most of the minority folks in Texas live. So none of these bills say, hey, this applies to all 254 counties. This one, I believe, has been amended to apply to only, well, I'm not sure this one, the other one that I mentioned about the other Secretary of State action bill, that's been specifically amended only to counties of 2.7 million people or more, which is Harris County. There's no other counties that big. So anyway,
Tim, I think that's real important that you bring that up. It's that everything you're explaining to us is very important, needless to say. But a fact like that, like here's what's really going on, is something we all need to be able to explain to our members why this is so important, because that's what's going to move people to action. I think that the groups I follow, like us and then the AFL-CIO and the Texas Tribune and Texas Civil Rights Project, you know, the right now, the main message is these are bad bills, bad bills, bad bills. And so I think people are not participating a lot as much in this legislative session as the last. Part of it's because of redistricting, but I feel that people feel hopeless and they can't do anything. And so we have to be able to be like, okay, we can do something. Like, this is horrific. Do you really understand do you see what's going on? This is targeted to a city of our county, 2.7 million. It's clearly Houston, it's Harris County, and it's to disempower voters. And that's not what we stand for. We have fought for people to vote for over 100 years, and the battle's not over. Come on, we can stop this. So that's our challenge. And so I'm glad we have good minds and hearts together, because we got to figure out a way to move people to action. Sally.
I want to pick up on the thought that you just left, Julie. I want to come back to it. So don't let me forget after I ask this question of Tim. Tim, do you recall the 3 codes that they have added? I had studied that bill, and I made notations of the 6 bodies of law that were giving us heartburn. I can see especially how Julie would have been concerned with regard to the labor code, really important. And I can see how Alice would be as well. I was especially concerned about, because of where I come from in my former practice, the Natural Resources Code. But because from my point of view, I could see solutions and getting around my concerns in the Natural Resources Code. However, can you tell me what 3 other codes were added? Because if they added the Health and Safety Code, man, all cities are up. Excuse expression, shit creek.
That one is not listed, Sally. Here's what they are. They're agriculture, business and commerce is new, finance.
Business and commerce is new.
Yeah.
It was added. It's the 3 that were added to the original 6 that I'm after.
Okay. All right. So it's business and commerce, local governments, and the property code.
So the good news about you did well at the city council, Tim, but it seems like our local government, I didn't get to see the court, a commissioner's court, but they're clearly worried about it. They got their lobbyists on it. And I would imagine local governments around the state are alarmed. So it'll be interesting to watch this bill play out.
Well, after I gave my testimony, Julie, I don't know if it was there earlier and I just missed it, or it got posted after I gave my testimony, but a day later or so, I went to the website for the legislature, for the committee for this bill, and they had 55 pages of public comment, written comments. And I found in there a letter that the mayor wrote to Todd Hunter back on March the 15th saying this is a bad idea. The day before I gave my comments to the commissioners, I actually ran into Brent Chesney just in the hallway over at the courthouse, and he was totally unaware of it. And I think that those guys did not have this on their radar. And he and Brent are real, Todd and Brent are real close, real good buddies.
So,
He's not
generally
close enough
speaking, this is Todd's
to
bill, right?
emasculate them.
No,
Yeah.
it's not Todd's bill. It's from Dustin Burrows. He's a guy out of Lubbock area.
But
Todd's-
didn't I see
Todd is-
Todd? Didn't I said I saw Todd's name on HB 2127?
Todd is
You
the chairman of the State Affairs Committee where this bill went through. But
Yeah.
I've looked at a lot of stuff, Sally, and my memory may be failing me, but I'm pretty sure when I looked at who the authors were, Todd was not there. And I've talked to him about this bill, and all he said is, I'll keep you informed about what happens. And I said, well, Todd, I need you to do better than that. I need you to oppose the bill. I suspect he probably voted it out in favor. I don't know for sure. But it is before the calendars committee when I looked yesterday. That they hadn't, it was coming up to the committee, but they hadn't decided.
I think it's on Tuesday, right?
I don't remember, Julie.
Well, there's
ahead,
one
Alice.
thing, is it with Todd, do we need to be calling him and say oppose the bill,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, Alice, it says, it's being debated by the House on Tuesday.
Oh, really? It's got a debate now.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just got this from the AFL-CIO.
Wow. Okay, well, thanks for that update. So they're going to floor vote on it then. That's awful.
You know,
So
talking about the history of this bill, you know, it isn't just, this bill has a very, leading up to this bill. This movement, and I'm going to have to talk partisan here, I'm sorry, but within the Republican Party of Texas, this movement against cities is not recent. It goes back to the late 1980s when I first began to practice municipal law. And the notion is to divest localities of grassroots democracy. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. When I first started practicing municipal law, cities had just come out of the era of sovereign immunity. In other words, until about the mid-1980s, cities had the same sovereign immunity practically as the state of Texas. So there was very little that cities were responsible for liability-wise. But in the late 1980s, that changed with this Civil Remedies and Practices Code and the Texas Tort Claims Act. So in return, what happened is that the city said, okay, we're going to give up. Well, I'm just saying that this is all codified in statute, but basically what city said, well, we're going to give up our sovereign immunity that the big boy defenses like the state has. And for this litany in these areas like solid waste and parks and recreation, and it's very definite, we're going to give up our sovereign immunity so that people who are aggrieved that we really screw over, excuse the expression, that we will not be able to walk away from those injuries anymore. So, but in return, we're going to get some protection. And those were in the form of caps. Like, for example, right now, I think it's $1 million per event and then $500,000 per person. I'm not sure exactly that those numbers are exactly right, but that's close enough for discussion purposes. And up to that point, cities had a kind of cavalier, blasé attitude toward injuring people and not being responsible. So when I first started practicing law, I was kind of puzzled. Well, I wasn't necessarily puzzled. I was bothered by the cavalier attitude of city staff. But that changed. That's because they were still operating mentally and emotionally under this King's X, I have sovereign immunity. Well, this has changed over time. And of course, cities are now very, very liability minded. But at the same time that I began to practice under those conditions, cities had a lot of prerogatives to protect natural resources and protect the things that their community was really dependent on. For example, we're very concerned about water quality. I mean, we've got all these committees. Good Lord, we have the bacteria, the mitigation committee that serves TCEQ. That still, we're into 10 years serving on that to try to do something about the bacteria that's coming out of those outfalls at Cole and Ropes Parks. That's still going on. But back in the late 80s, cities had the ability to control and to regulate water quality within their watershed. In other words, whatever fed into the Nueces River, at that time, the city had the ability to say, no, you're not going to put a certain type of facility or discharge into that watershed because that affects our surface water that we draw from. Well, in the late 1980s, that fell by the wayside. And it was sort of part of this, it was the inception of this movement against divesting cities of the ability to govern themselves and to govern and regulate the resources that they were dependent upon. And it seems like this is just a full, now that was in the late the late 1980s. So this movement has been building for a long time, and it is not casual. It's not, while it is impacting those big counties that are Democratic and where there are voters of color, and that tend to go against the grain of the powers that be in Austin. While that's the outcome, it's not recent. It is part of a strategy, and it goes back a long ways. And I was thinking, you know, the league has priorities that have been expressed over time, and we're working on some right now that involve gun rights, and voters and elections and voters' rights. We're talking here about how we haven't gotten out the word in the past. We need to get ahead of the curve before the next legislative session. We need to do advocacy in advance so that we're not behind the curve when the next session comes around. What can we do within our small powers to help educate people and advocate? And one of the thoughts that I had was to perhaps supplement Julie's program efforts with something called a Great or Important Speakers Program, where we as the league, local league, we call upon or solicit some important folks. And Tim could be one of these, even though he's local. But we draw these resources from around the state and from around the nation to come speak to us locally at the league as one of these publicized, important, great speakers. And we've got the resources to do it with now that we didn't have before. And the beauty of this is that first of all, we concentrate on league priorities. And we're able to publicize those as league priorities. And because these are either well-known or even controversial speakers, it's a publicity magnet. And it sets a positive advocacy stage for us to get ahead of the next legislative session. Let's see. And here's some of these people, especially the father of environmental justice, he's nearby. He's an African-American fellow. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he lives in Houston. And he is a big personality in this area. And if we can't get him by Zoom.
Dr. Bullard.
Yeah, right. And if we can't get him by Zoom and we were able to have an in-person meeting, then we've got the resources now to pay his overnight stay to come see us. And that's just one thought. Here's another one too. Now that has to do with environmental justice. Now on the election side, in Gillespie County and Fredericksburg, their entire election staff was lost before the last election because they were harassed out of office. What if we could get that former county clerk? I think she was a county clerk. I don't think she was elections administrator, although that was her function, but that was not her title because she was elected. I think she was elected. But what if we could get her to come as an important, maybe not necessarily great speaker, but an important speaker and talk to us about that event and what was the fallout and how well did it work when the Secretary of State replaced her and her staff? It may have worked out fine and it may not, but nevertheless, the fact that she was actually harassed out of office by threats, which seems to me would be a very interesting and compelling topic if we could concentrate on getting speakers here like that. And it would give us this segue, it would give us a vehicle for not only publicizing the issues that the league's interested in, what's inevitably going to come up at the next legislative session, but it would give us local publicity and it would give us a chance to talk about what we're really all about, that we keep lamenting that we haven't done so far locally. And that's kind of my thought. Anil, what are we?
So,
Alice
it
has
looks
had
like
her
you-
hand up. Alice has had her hand up for a while, so we'll respond to that, and she might have a response as well. So Alice?
Well, actually, Sally, I really appreciate your thinking through these issues and I was taught when I worked for a certain group of people, don't complain unless you have some kind of fix. And so I appreciate you recognizing the fact that we do a lot of talking and complaining, but we really don't ever bring anything to the table to help with the problem. So thank you for highlighting the issues and also bringing something to the table to give us something to think about. And I really appreciate that. I had my hand up earlier because it was something that I wanted to ask Tim about. We were discussing Todd and these bills. But my concern and my question to Tim is, and you may not be able to answer this, but you may be able to kind of pontificate on it at least. Does Todd really understand the ramifications of 2127 and the bill that you just got done telling us about that's going to try to strip us of all of our power to regulate ourselves? Does he understand this bill?
I think so, Sally. I've had a discussion with him about it, and I told him it's a radical bill and kind of a crazy bill. And he basically said, well, this was, gosh, I don't know, maybe 10 days or so ago. And he said, it had to get through. We're negotiating it on it now. And well, he didn't say I'm negotiating. He said, I know negotiations are going on about the bill. I said, okay, well, good. And he said, I'll keep you informed, which is at that point, I said, great, I appreciate being informed, but I want you to oppose it too.
Mhm.
Now, whether he's done that second step, I don't know. And I have bad news for you on the calendars. I think we know why this happened now. Well, we were on the call here. I went and checked to see who's on the House Calendars Committee. And the guy who's the chairman is the guy who wrote the preemption bill, Representative Burrows. So obviously his bill was going to get a vote. So now we really need to put the pressure on to the extent we can to, say, no, don't pass this bill. And apparently it's coming up for a vote on Tuesday. So
What about Herrera? Who's talked to Herrera about it?
I have not.
Okay, we
but
need to do that.
Sure.
Because we want to make sure we talk to both reps, because
Right.
it is nonpartisan. And I think historically, Sally pointed out to me, I wrote in the chat, it's really, when she takes it back to 1980s, it's just that it was the change in our economy. And so we don't even have to talk partisan. It's like when neoliberalism set in, think through it, NAFTA came not too long after that. They had to start stripping cities and countries of their power. So it is a nonpartisan issue. And because of that, we should see where Herrera lays on that. Well, I'm going to yield this back to Alice. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but do we have one of us that wants, Tim, since you've been doing the outreach with Todd, can you outreach to Herrera and see where he is on this?
Yeah, and I would say, all of us ought to call these guys. They're not too hard to find. Just go to Google, the Texas Legislature, and click on members, and all 150 of them will pop up. And then you just click.
We're going to do that. We just need one person though to just do an initial outreach and report back. So we have an
Yeah, no, I'll be happy to call Herrera. I'll happy to contact Todd again. I sent him a text message the other day after I saw this new version, and basically it was kind of like, what?
Yeah, and then let's find that out, and then let's report to Catherine, and maybe, with media, maybe she can do an editorial or something like that.
What about?
Well, we're just running out of time though. I mean, almost, well,
Yeah.
of course,
No, we're not.
We got to
We're
go
not
through
running
the
out
Senate.
of, it's okay. We're not running out of time. This is when everything happens. This is the most important time. Because we're going to end up going into special session, It's gonna, so this is the time where we can really take some action. So
Oh, yeah.
that's the good part about the calendar, Alice.
Well, I was asking about La Mantilla, but to your point that we're not running out of time, and to Tim's point, they're going to be voting on this on Tuesday. Why aren't we running out of time?
I think it has to go through more than one vote, right, Tim? It goes to debate and then it goes through several, like 3 votes, I think. has to-
That I'm not sure of, Sally. I mean,
Okay.
Julie, I don't know. Sally, do you know?
I don't know, Tim. I'm not that
And
well
then
informed.
it has to go to the Senate as
Yeah,
well,
that's what I
right?
said, for
So
sure.
it's not over. What they'll probably do is, make amendments to it. I would suspect they do something. Here's the pattern, right? What have they been doing? They have first they try to confuse everyone. There was over 8,000 bills filed. They were all very bad. There's some good ones, HB 12 that extends the postpartum care. So that's good news. But then it distracts people with the 8,000, and the horrendous ones are particularly troubling. Now they're whittling it down, and we're going to find out exactly where we lay. And there are hundreds of organizations around the state and people that care like us. They're pushing back. And so now's the time to make that big tidal wave of pushback. Will the bill go away? Maybe not, probably not, but I bet you it gets amended. Unfortunately, the amendment might be something. How have they been amending everything?
Well, this bill, the big picture, the preemption bill got worse. I mean, it was
Right.
6 codes, now it's 9.
Because they want to strip us of our hope, but it's going to get worse. What are they targeting is my point. They're targeting the big cities and the cities that have minority voters, the same ones they targeted with redistricting. So it's to disempower local government, but also voters, because by disempowering anything, it takes our hope away. So that's all. I think we have time, Alice. I know that here in Corpus, though, we're in a particularly important spot. We have 2 representatives that have been there a long time. Our Representative Hunter is on the State Affairs Committee. He has an enormous amount of power and influence. And I would say Corpus is a city they want to strip things away. We're probably on the list because of our petroleum industrial ties. And so,
Well, it seems like to me that if I'm understanding everything that has been said, they're just trying to make a one size fits all. And that is egregious. And if I'm wrong, somebody needs to get me back on the right track. But just hearing everything that's been said about this bill, they're trying to make one size fit all, and that the state is the one that's doing the measuring and making the size. And so that is not something that we want, because every community is different.
right.
We have the tourist industry, we have the oil and gas industry, we have the fishing industry, and a few others. There are places that don't have those same amenities. They operate based on different ways of economy, the way they're bringing in money, and then some of them don't have anything, and they just don't care. But we should be making the biggest noises, because it's going to affect so many different disciplines in our community. And if we don't start banging that drum at whatever stage we are in, we are going to be doomed. And so the pushback is now.
Right.
I don't know, Julie, you know more about this kind of stuff than I do. And Tim, you've been involved. But I'm ready to make some noise.
I think
Sal,
you know enough. I think you're on it. You got it. you see what's happening.
So
Yeah.
Sally, you understand a lot of this stuff, and we're going to be dependent on you guys to bring clarity to us and to bring that when the time for a clarion call is needed, we're going to depend on you guys that understand that legal speak to bring these things to us. And we need to get busy. We need to get busy because this stuff is frightening the hell out of me. And so, and I get it, Julie, that there are organizations throughout the state, throughout the nation, that's pushing back. However, the nation doesn't really have a lot of input on what we do here in Texas. But just based on what Tim said, or I think it was somebody said, some guy came down from Pennsylvania or something.
Mhm.
It is important that we as states have our states' rights and still be able to govern ourselves. That's like having, the state come in and tell you how to run your family. I mean, we
Well,
already
they're
got
doing
that.
that too, aren't they?
Yeah, that we already got that when it comes to child discipline. That's out the window. That is why teachers right now are having such a difficult time in the classroom because these kids get it. They get it before the adults get it. Well, you can't spank me, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so they run amok. And when we were out there, Julie, and excuse me for just going on, but I just need to say this. When we were out there at the library board last week in Flower Bluff, one of I guess the main guy, a librarian there, brought to us how the kids had run amok in the library. And while they were waiting, because that was a place kind of like a catch-all where parents send the kids are known to go, are told to go to the library until the parent can come and pick them up. And those kids got into that library and just ran amok. So, I mean, from the lowest level of control all the way to the highest, we are losing our ability to control our environment. And we need to be screaming to the top of our voices that this is not what we want. It is not a one size fits all.
No.
Okay.
Well, no, it's all what you said was really important. Thank you. And I'm glad you brought the nationwide into it because this is not happening just in Texas. Look, 1980s. There has been a playbook since then, and it's gotten struck better and better. And whatever we're up against uses the same pages out of the playbook. They test different pages in different places and see what will take, and then they repeat it somewhere else. Corpus is one of the testing grounds always. It's been that way since I've been here in the early 2000s. So we are in a very, very important place. But what we can't lose, we have to recognize that. But what we also have to do is have faith that we can change it, which is what I think you're saying, Alice. And we do that by making noise. Come on, John Lewis, Good Trouble. This is the only thing that the power we have right now is our advocacy and the vote. We're a well-respected organization, nationwide, statewide, and in Corpus Christi. Our elected officials know that we help get them elected because we register people to vote. We do 411. We have our voters guide. They pay attention to who we can mobilize. It makes a difference. So the emails that we can send out right now through our website, they end up making a difference. When we lobbied, though, and I've had them tell me this before, they're going to, even though there's over 40,000 sent right now from the state, that makes a difference, but they still kind of look at it as one entity. So what we have to do is get people as individuals here in Corpus Christi to reach out to our elected officials right now. And have and be able to have the same kind of discussion we're having, but that's going to take us talking to other members so that we have a better understanding, just like how Tim and Sally laid it out more for us. And you, Alice, you also laid it out. just like that. These are the conversations we have to have. The calendar, look, it goes to, the session's going to go to May 29th. Everyone knows, if you dealt with the ledge, that the biggest weeks are the last 2 weeks. That's when everything happens. Sometimes the last 2 days. So that's why I say we have time. Real quick, what I just sent off an article to the voter, and it's calling members to meet up at Calypso Cafe on Thursday, the 20th. And look, if we even get 25 people to show up and do an action right now, we can do a postcard. We don't have a time or money to get a bunch printed up, I don't think. So what I did is I just ordered some plain brown, good paper postcards, and people can use those. They can decorate it up themselves. Maybe if we have some stickers, which Anel, you might have some League of Women Voter stickers, which would be handy. And people could draw on them, do whatever. But also, whoever's able to join us from this call on Thursday, the 20th, I know Tim can't, we should have our phones there, because right now the phone call is going to make a big difference. It's a good contact, and we did great. Remember when Catherine was sending that out to our team, and a lot of people called La Mantilla and they called our elected officials. Now we need to use that pattern again. I'm having fun with that, and get our members to do the same. And so I found that when I work with nurses, often they're busy like our members are, and they don't have time. But if you had the phone right there and ready to go, and have the number and say, just do it now, call right now in front of me, then that makes a difference. So that's one thing we're going to do. And then we can think about more things to do, but at least, we got that going. And then on the great speakers, great idea. We should discuss that more at the annual meeting and retreat. But also add to that, I think we forget that we can meet with our representatives in between. That's when they're home. That's this idea of home control that we're fighting for. The senators and representatives are supposed to be available in your home districts. That's why they spend more time here, because we're supposed to be able to go talk to them. So we should seize that opportunity. And I don't want to take any more time. I feel that Anel might have something to say, just because we haven't heard from her, and I don't want to silence you at all.
No,
so if Anel, if you have anything to say, it'd be great. And then Sally has her hand up.
I actually don't. I'm just fascinated sitting in on these meetings and hearing what you folks all have to say and report. I'm just fascinated. I wish more people would join into these conversations. So that's it from me.
And we have Sally and then Alice.
About lobbying and advocacy. The city of Corpus Christi belongs to the Texas Municipal League. And the Texas Municipal League is an association of, I can't think of any city in Texas that does not belong to the Texas Municipal League. And the league, like the League of Women Voters, the league's function is to protect the backside of cities. Where cities are vulnerable or they're losing out, the Texas Municipal League is supposed to be there to advocate. So the Texas Municipal League should have girded its loins and should be out there fighting against HB 2127. But in order for that to happen, the cities themselves have to pressure their representative, which is the Texas Municipal League. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send email messages to every member of our city council and to the mayor to make sure, and I'm going to be specific, HB 2127, that they are doing everything that they can do through their lobbyist to make sure that the Texas Municipal League is fighting this thing with everything they've got. So in additional picking up, Julie has talked about getting in touch with the Texas legislators. We can do the same thing with the city council. They have some pull to make sure that they're keeping that pressure on the Texas Municipal League to fight this thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some city council members that haven't the foggiest idea of what all this means to us. But if we
Yes.
don't let them know, they're not going to make sure that city staff is doing liaison with the Texas Municipal League to fight that bill. So city council members are still in play.
That's good. And so we should add that to our list of folks that we need to reach out to. I almost want to say yes. I was taught to use a word called target, but I don't want to do that right now with all this gun violence that's around. So we should outreach to those folks. I will keep that in mind, Sally, if you send me some more communication about it. So whoever shows up on Thursday, we can have them reach out to city council as well. And we had Alice, and then Tim has his hand up.
Okay, my question is, and I just want to say hooray, hooray, yay for us pushing our city councilman, because I agree, Sally, that there's these, as myself, as an elected official for the school board, I focus and concentrate a lot of what I do based on what we have to vote on and what comes across our agenda. And so there are some things in the city that I have no clue about. I don't get myself involved. I don't do research. And having said that, I'm sure that the city councilmen and women do the same thing. They focus on city stuff. Now, that maybe even precludes them focusing on what's going on in the legislature. So I agree with the fact that many of them may not even have a clue what's going on, because they have a centralized focus that goes to the city. But I'm trying to kind of spread myself a little thinner nowadays, because this is so important. Voting rights are so important to me. I mean, it's been something that's been on my agenda since I was 18 years old. So I agree that we probably need to start pushing and shoving our city council people as well, because many of them are connected. Even Todd's son is on the city council. So there's no reason why we should not be, and I don't like to use the word targeting either, but maybe we can have another word that we can pull up and start using.
Yeah.
Instead of targeting, since we are in an era of gun people using guns all the time. But that, I wanted to give you a hearty amen on that. The other thing that I wanted to ask is, can we, and speaking with Julie, trying to get people to make these phone calls, is it possible that we could probably tag the membership committee and Sylvia to maybe help us make these phone calls, because they have the list of all of our members, and I get phone calls all the time. Bode Wright calls me to remind me of the meetings and all of that. And she doesn't say, hey, Alice, I know you know this. She just gets right into the message, reminds me that there's a meeting, and she gets off the phone. No chit chat, none of that. They're just doing their jobs. And so I'm just wondering if we could maybe ask Sylvia and her membership committee to provide maybe some of the members to help us make those phone calls.
Okay.
And that's what I
That's a
would say.
great idea. Thank you. We can do that. And
Okay.
I can get in touch with them and write up a quick script. I love that idea. I'm also, Tim, I know your hand's up, but y'all could look at the last city council meeting. Tim did speak, so public comments they're good to look at, to hear him if you haven't had a chance. Also, the reason I was reluctant to use that T word was there was an open carry advocate there, and in my opinion, he threatened the city council and said he's going to come back carrying guns. So I don't want to make them uncomfortable. But also in that last city council meeting, they had a legislative update. Their lobbyist is named Wendy Herman. And I'm looking at my notes, and she does as Sally knew, we are members of the Texas Municipal League, and so she is getting reports from them and working with them, so we could add that layer of, really press through that. But she reported on the bills the city's watching, and she reported on the SB 2127 and said, she talked about that it had been amended, so I guess that's that. She didn't say it wasn't, that it was a bad amendment. She didn't mention that. It was probably those 3 things they added, Tim, I don't know. But she said they modified the city preemption bill and that they sent another letter from Paulette Guajardo. So that evidently they've sent 2 from her and, multiple letters, and that they might need testimony from the mayor. And so that would be the ask, I think, to ask Mayor Guajardo to testify against HB 2127, right?
So-
That's what you're suggesting, Sally?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay,
That's
so
the
does
kind of,
everybody see the ask? Because it's
Yes.
also, this is such an enormous, like, it can be overwhelming. And so for us to move people to action, if we can find, simplify it. It is, you still want them to have all the background, but when it comes to the ask, we can say like, call the Mayor Guajardo and ask her to testify
Testify.
against HB 2127, right? Okay.
Julia, the way I understand it, and if any of you know any different, correct me, but I don't think she would have the opportunity to testify. The opportunities to testify are in the committees. So it's gone beyond the State Affairs Committee. Now it's going to go to the House for a floor vote. So I don't know where she would testify. I mean, she could certainly call and write and, do all that stuff, but I'm not aware that she'd have an opportunity to publicly testify anywhere. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's the way it works.
Well,
We
what
should
I like to,
we can investigate and find out. Alice, what do you like?
well, I'd like to see if Tim couldn't ask for a meeting with her to go over how egregious this bill is and to impress upon her how important her voice will be and is going to be in the process, whether it's letter writing, whether it's sending out. I'm not sure what all could be done, but I think that, and I don't want to think that I know what's going on in Paulette's mind, but Paulette has a lot of things on her plate, and investigating and learning about this bill is probably not her priority. So I'm just thinking that if there is any way, Tim, that you might be able to get into her office and at least get a 10, 15, 20-minute meeting with her and explain bring it to her like you brought it to us, and even include some of what Sally's historical data and how this all came about, what it means, because she's going to run again, maybe, and if she does, she needs to understand this, because then she would then be in the era of when these laws will take place, and it's going to affect her ability to lead and the rest of us. So if that's possible, maybe we could get Catherine or somebody to write a letter asking to have an audience with her, and Tim, you would be there maybe to kind of explain this thing away so that she can fully understand what's going on.
I really don't know her personally at all. I think as far as getting the meeting, I think it would be best, Catherine has the credibility as the president of the organization.
Right.
So I think she would be the one more likely to get a meeting. And I'd be happy to attend if Catherine wants me to. Or if she says, no, let me do it and I'll brief her on it. If she hasn't, doesn't have the opportunity to, learn about it. So I'd be happy to do that either way, but I was making a note here to myself. I have the mayor's cell phone number, so I'm going to text her about it. But I was also planning to go to the city council. I was looking at their upcoming meetings. They've got one on the 18th, this coming Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday. And then they have the public comment that'll start somewhere between 11:30 and noon. And, just tell them, hey, I'm back. And last time I was here was a fire. Now it's a 5-alarm fire.
Yes.
You guys really need to get after it. And
Yes.
I could tell from some of the looks on the city council folks, it looked like what I was telling them was a surprise.
Mm.
Didn't have the opportunity to really scan all 9 faces. So a couple of them that kind of gave me a funny look.
Yeah, look at the tape again. That they were most concerned over being sued.
Yeah, well, naturally. I mean,
Something's got to get their
guess what?
attention.
You get low pay, hard work, and now you can have your personal finances at risk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
So I think that's important that you need to reach out, or we need to, in some manner, some vehicle, reach out to Paulette and have a discussion with her. I have Paulette's number as well, and she and I are good friends, but I do not want to impinge on Catherine's leadership abilities to meet with her, because she does hold the credibility as our leader. So I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but if I can be of help, you can call on me.
So who wants to contact Catherine to ask her to reach out to the mayor?
I think that's a Julie thing.
Yeah, I'll reach
Okay.
out to her. She's gonna look at the YouTube as well, but we
Sure.
definitely, everybody's on the right track with that. We'll,
Okay.
one of the tasks is, I'll ask Catherine if she can set up if she would like to set up a meeting with Paula Guajardo, the mayor, and that we
What-
suggest it and why, and then I'll stay in touch with you all. And then the other thing is the member calls, so I'll work on that. And then we have Cafe Calypso. I'm calling it a meetup. People could just come in, have a cup of coffee. We can get them, a briefing on what's going on, and they could take care of business right then and there. They can do a postcard, a phone call, or they could take the information we give them and go do something with it. That's what I've got for action items for me coming off this call. And thank you for the, Anel put a note in the chat. She's trying to find a different word. Thank you. I want to acknowledge that. This is, she understands why we're avoiding that word target. Oh,
Focus, not target, focus.
there we go.
So what day is I read those, that list, that chain of text messages on the Cafe Calypso. What day is that on?
It's Thursday, the 20th. Look, it's because it's the third Thursday and people are, I'm going to use the pattern word again. People are used to that pattern. And Chris is so dedicated to the voter. And she said, I saved a front page for the membership meeting. Are you going to have one? I actually wasn't, but then I started seeing how legislation's moving. I thought, well, why don't we just seize the opportunity, because we have to do something.
Well,
and
the
so
voter's
that's
a
where
good
we're at.
place to put that.
Yeah, so I think it's great. And then I also submitted an article just on the tools that we have through the League of Women Voters Texas, which is, the Take Action Center, and all the people that are watching these bills, because it's impossible. You really do have to have a well-heeled group of people to keep track of these. And so the way we're structured, we have these issue chairs and they have a team under them. And so I think it's important for our members to understand, like, our dues are going to this. We're paying for this to happen, and we get all this information because of it, and we can do something about it. And so there's an article about that. Tim, did you submit anything about HB 2127? Because I didn't really, I just directed people to our website and to the.
I
Texas
wrote a letter
legislature.
to the editor about it, and oddly enough, that got noticed by Tom Whitehurst. The guy who used to be the editorial writer for the Caller Times, and he called me up and invited me to a talk show in the morning, Pudge at halftime or something.
That's
Mhm.
good.
So I went in there and talked about it the other day, and also managed to throw in some stuff on redistricting to make sure people know how bad a job they did. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I was on a call the other day, in this list of bills that I posted in the chat that came from somebody who's been really keeping an eye on them, and he organized them by different categories. So there's anti-immigration, voting rights, DEI, other stuff. So anyway, if you might want to take a look at that and copy that and see if there's something in there that's of particular concern to you. And Sally, I could tell when you were first speaking here that you looked like you had a lot of those ideas in writing. I sure would not want to lose that work that you've done there. So if you could maybe email that around, because you have a lot of good ideas there, and I sure wouldn't want to, let them slip by just because they went too fast by my ears.
Sure. I'll send them to whoever was here today.
Good.
And Anel usually saves the chat, I think.
Mhm.
And so we'll have that because that'll be good to, people have other things they're concerned about. It'd be good to be able to direct them to that.
Do you want
I
me to
think-
send them somewhere?
Mm, well,
Today's chat?
yeah, to Catherine for sure. And then
Okay.
probably to me, everybody on the call.
Okay.
Brittany
How
might
about to-
want it.
How about to the entire board?
Okay.
There you go. So we're over our time. I don't know how y'all are doing, but I think Sally does have her hand up. Is it all right if we?
Oops, excuse me, I missed you. I really appreciate with all that she has on her plate, Alice is volunteering to go with the league's delegation to meet with the mayor. And the reason I think it's so important for Alice to be there if she can is that Alice is a recognized, nonpartisan, successful local politician. And I think that the mayor will respond to that status that Alice has and Alice's persuasive skills. And if you can, as I said, I appreciate it. And I hope that you can take Alice with you. I hope that works out. And that's all I had to say.
That'll be good. And I'll talk to Catherine. I imagine she's going to be thinking the same thing, that if we were going to meet with the mayor, she might want to meet with the county judge, or at least extend the invitation, just like when we talk to Hunter, we should make sure we get a first oversight of Herrera, which is on an action item for you, Tim.
I
Just the
suggest that you
outreach and an
concentrate on the
assessment.
mayor, I think, rather than the county judge for this reason. Counties from the very beginning have very limited ordinance and regulation powers. They're already boxed in, but the city is not. Counties are not home rule cities. They are already organs and arms of the state. So they are already almost precluded.
Okay.
They have nothing to lose or very little to lose with HB 2127. The city has everything to lose with HB 21.
Okay. So we'll let Catherine know that. She's going to see this tape, I'm sure too, but she's going to want to know that information just to make sure we're fair and balanced. Okay. Everybody good?
Julie, I'm going to send this chat to you,
Okay.
and then you can forward it out to the board with whatever discussion on it you want
All right.
mentioned.
Thank
How's that sound?
That's perfect. And Tim, when I was talking about doing an article, what I meant also was, have you talked to Chris Garcia about the voter, our newsletter? Did
No.
you?
Have not.
I don't know. She's in full-fledged, like it's quite a piece of work for her. I don't know if she has room for it or whatever, but if she has any space, you might want to mention something about
Okay,
but reach out to her and ask.
okay. All right. So when you send the chat around this list of bills, just make it clear that that is not my work. I don't want to be taking credit for somebody else's work. That was done by one of the guys on one of the poor people's calls I was on the other day, and he just was kind enough to send it around. So
Okay.
don't want somebody thinking I'm taking his ideas.
All right. That's good. If you have his name, I'll be glad to mention his name.
Well, I don't
let
know
everybody-
I don't know if he would want it mentioned, so. I
I'll
didn't
just
speak,
say you
but ask
got
him
it
just-
from the call. All right.
Do you want me to stop the recording?
Yeah, we're done, I think.
But